Hey, how's it going guys? Captain Kuba here, and it's good to be back. For those of you who haven't noticed, I haven't uploaded any videos to the channel for the past few days because I was having a short vacation in Foley, Alabama. I ate alligator meat for the first time, went to a beach that was in Veradero, and I got really tired of eating fast food. All in all, it was a fun time off from work, but I'm glad to finally be back to continue obsessing about God of War. I had originally planned this video to be uploaded last week, but given that we left on such a short notice, I didn't have enough time to schedule it. But here I am, making what I consider to be one of the weirdest videos in this channel. Because today, I'm not going to theorize anything about the story of God of War. Instead, I'm going to theorize what Sony's plan for the God of War series is. This idea came to me the other day as I realized Fallen God was able to explain a mysterious sentence found in the God of War 2018 novel 3 years ago. This shows a level of careful planning only seen in things like the MCU, which makes me wonder if Sony's planning something similar for the God of War franchise. Something like the God of War gaming universe, a GAOGU if you will. Yeah, that's never gonna catch up. But despite this being a stupid name, the concept might be something Sony's considering for God of War. I say this because God of War 2018 was one of the best-selling PlayStation 4 games, and the sequel is easily the most anticipated game Sony has in development. Even Herman Hulst, the head of PlayStation Studios, has said in interviews that the next God of War game is the next PlayStation exclusive he's most excited for people to finally see. This, coupled with millions of fans who are still theorizing about the story for the sequel 3 years after the game came out, and you have a candidate for Sony's best money-making cow. Which makes me think Sony's going to do everything in their power to keep God of War relevant for years to come.
I have so many things in there that are just setups for much later and much later and really far later. So I'm a lunatic.
So without further ado, let me put on my fake Sony executive hat and give you my thoughts on what the future for the God of War series looks like.
You must prepare yourself.
I'm obviously starting my predictions with the game people are calling God of War Ragnarok. And I just want to stop right here and say that this is not the official name of the game. When the game was announced, gaming journalists just assumed this was the name given all the reference to Ragnarok in the previous entry. But from a story perspective, it makes more sense for this game to be set during the last months or weeks of Fimbulwinter. Which is why for this video, I'll refer to this game as God of War Fimbulwinter. Anyway, you guys have heard me talk about this game before. I believe this game will end on a cliffhanger, teasing the actual Battle of Ragnarok for the next entry in the series. Now, you might find this next prediction odd, because after God of War Fimbulwinter releases, I don't think we'll get the sequel next. I think Sony has learned from the last experience with the God of War series, and they're going to give us a prequel story before the Norse saga ends. Look at the sales number of previous God of War prequels. God of War Chains of Olympus was released after God of War 2 and it sold like crazy, despite it being released on another system entirely. God of War Ghost of Sparta and Ascension, on the other hand, didn't fare too well. Game reviewers said it was because the series was growing stale, which is true to some extent, but I think it had more to do with these games being released after God of War 3. You know, the conclusion of the Greek saga. After killing Zeus, who honestly cared about the Furies as the next big threat for Kratos? This is why I believe Sony's not going to release the Ragnarok game as soon as Fimbulwinter ends. They're going to want to milk the series a little bit longer, which is why I think we'll get a prequel game with Faye set a few months before she meets Kratos. In this game, we will get a different look at Midgard. We'll be able to interact with giants who have not left it yet. She'll probably meet Tyr, as one of the tapestries in his temple suggests. And most important of all, we might see the arrival of Jormungandr to the Lake of Nine. This game will most likely end with some sort of time travel shenanigans in which Faye travels to the future, gets the wolves Fenrir, Skull and Hati, and brings them to the past in order to bring Kratos to Scandinavia as the novel suggests. This might even be the other game Santa Monica is currently working on, but that's just my theory. That could be an entirely new IP. Now after this prequel game, we will obviously get God of War Ragnarok, and this will easily be the best-selling God of War game in the series, possibly the best-selling PlayStation game of all time. I predict this game will not be too drastically different from the first two, as this will be the final game in the Norse saga. I'm not sure how this game will end, but I think it's a good idea for Santa Monica to leave both Kratos and Atreus alive. That way, they have space to branch off into two different types of games later on. But more on that later. Now, even if Kratos does die at the end of the Norse saga, I'll explain later on why that isn't a big deal. After this game releases, Santa Monica will most likely take a break from the God of War series and work on a new IP. Sony on the other hand will try and keep the God of War name relevant. They will do this by making a movie or a TV show. As David Jaffe said during the interview with me, there is no way Sony's not planning a God of War movie or a TV show. It only makes sense for them to make one. I predict the story of this movie or TV show will be set during the time when Kratos was just a Spartan soldier and interacted with people such as the original Atreus.
But Atreus of Sparta was unlike the rest of us. He wore a smile even in the worst of times. He was happy when the day came for him to lay down his life in battle. His sacrifice saved countless others and turned the tide in our favor.
This setting would be fine, but I think it will be more interesting if they instead set the story during Kratos' 10 years of servitude to the gods of Olympus. That way we can see all of the Olympian gods Kratos has killed in God of War 3 at the height of the rule of the Greek realm, along with some of the most dangerous missions the gods gave him in exchange for their forgiveness. This movie or TV show will also have the purpose of getting fans of the series hyped for future games once again. Now I know that a lot of OG God of War fans are gonna like this next prediction. After some time has passed, Sony will release a God of War 1 remake. But what exactly could this remake look like? We know that they can't simply copy and paste the mechanics of God of War 2018 and call it a day. The original God of War game had a strong emphasis on platforming and swimming sections, as opposed to the new one, and they can't simply give God of War 1 pretty graphics, since a lot of the mechanics haven't aged that well. The dilemma of remaking an old game in a way in which old school fans of the series as well as new fans will enjoy will be the catalyst for another reboot of the series. I predict this game will look something like the first prototype for God of War 2018, in which the camera looked familiar to the original, but was still controllable like in the final game. If this game is successful, it will once again revitalize the series and Sony will see this as a sign to continue making more God of War games. Very similar to what happened with the Resident Evil series after the remake of the second game was released. After some time has passed, Sony will release another God of War game starring Kratos. I'm not sure where the story for this game could be set, since we still don't know what his fate will be at the end of the Norse saga. It's possible he will go to another pantheon, but in this video I'm going to assume that he will die by sacrificing himself for Atreus. The reason I said Kratos dying is not a big deal is because he has done it many times before. And also, if I am correct and Kratos has a selfless death by sacrificing himself for Atreus, this will only send him to the higher plane of existence. Something that has been heavily teased in the Fallen God comics. Here Kratos will meet his old friend Athena and an Egyptian god by the name of Thoth. Again, I want to repeat that there's zero evidence for any of this. This is just my prediction / wishful thinking. Anyway, in this realm Athena and Thoth might give Kratos the mission of unifying all the pantheons because it's good? I'm only saying this because this is one of Tyr's characteristics that Santa Monica might want to explore in a game. But again, I really don't know who Kratos will be fighting in the higher plane of existence in order to accomplish his mission of unifying all the pantheons. Now, while this game will be similar to the original games in the series, Santa Monica might attempt to make their first open world God of War game starring Atreus. And this is the game I believe will be set in Egypt. As Mimir has said before, this is a pantheon with many gods, suitable for an open world environment. This would also give Atreus enough room to practice his shape-shifting abilities. Imagine flying across the Egyptian pantheon in the form of a griffin. The reason I think Santa Monica needs to make this game is because Egypt is heavily teased in God of War 2018. In fact, it was originally going to be the setting for the game, meaning that Santa Monica still has a lot of unused artwork from that setting that they might want to use in the future. This game will also serve to keep new God of War fans happy, as it will retain all the RPG features you love so much. And for the story, I'm going to stick with the arc of unifying all the pantheons. The first act of the story will be with Kratos in the higher plane of existence, and the second one will be with Atreus in Egypt, and that leaves us with the third game. The game in which all the pantheons will finally be united.
What are those runes in the corners?
Not runes. Symbols from different lands. They mean...
War.
Aye.
How do you...
This one I know too well.
In this game, all-powerful higher existence Kratos teams up with the sun to defeat the true villain of the series, Evil Athena. And yes, I am sticking with my 2 Athena theory. Deal with it. This game might be the end of the series, as all the pantheons coming together will be the first step in the God of War universe looking a little like ours. But if this game is successful, Sony will without a doubt hire some creative writers to give Kratos and Atreus another adventure to tackle, and in the process make a ton of money. And that's really what it all comes down to. While it's true that video games are a modern form of art, it's also true that they're a business. The moment Sony's not profiting from the God of War series will be the moment the series dies, and they'll move on to other projects. That's just the way it is. That's why in the beginning I said that this is one of my weirdest videos I've ever done, because I cannot predict whether the next game will be successful or not. It's very unlikely that God of War Fimbulwinter will not make a profit, given all the hype, But if every fan hates the game for one reason or another, Sony might not even let Santa Monica make a third game. Again, this is very unlikely, but it has happened before to other game companies. But anyway, there you have it guys, my prediction for the God of War series. Make sure to let me know what you think about it. Do you agree with the games I predict? Do you think we'll see other pantheons instead of Egypt and the higher plane of existence? Whatever your thoughts are, make sure to let me know in the comment section below. As always, I want to thank all of my members for supporting the channel monthly. People like the G-Man420, Celtic Nord, and Quasin Shams, to name a few, are the main reason I can take longer to make quality God of War videos without having to worry about being in the algorithm. But I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos, because being in the algorithm is very good. All in all, thank you to all who support me in one way or another. And with that said, thanks for watching, and remember, go forth in the name of Ragnarok.